Property owners and developers can look forward to a new resource that helps them better design and plan against floods and rising sea levels. It's in the form of a guidebook packed with practical case studies and measures to prepare for intense downpours and coastal surges. This is meant to go hand in hand with the upcoming guidelines for coastal protection and another on surface water drainage. An 11-member committee made up of architects, engineers and developers will work on this and come up with recommendations by early next year. Now, part of their work is to give advice on flood-resilient measures for Singapore's context. The committee is launched and co-led by PUB, the National Water Agency. And to share more, we are joined by two of the co-leads of the committee, also known as an Alliance for Action, Tze-Ch'in, Chief Executive of PUB, and Melvin Tan, immediate past president of the Singapore Institute of Architects. Thank you for joining us. Tze-Ch'in, first question to you. Why the need for this guidebook now, and how have countries, have benefited who already have, a guidebook like this?
Well, thanks for that question, Genevieve. I think we see this as part of a suite of things that we put together to make Singapore more flood resilient. I think, as you know, from PUB's perspective, we see flood resilience to be a collective effort, And we have a series of things that we put together. PUB has invested in drainage infrastructure and will continue to do so. And this is part of our efforts to improve and raise community flood resilience. Getting the message out there, I think you may be aware that we had a campaign late last year called the Flood Wise. Yeah. And so this is also meant to be a publication that gets the message out there on what homeowners and property owners, as well as developers, can consider doing to make their developments more flood resilient. We have seen such publications in other countries, in the Netherlands, in the United States, and even in Japan. And I think the idea and the intent is very much the same, really to get people aware of the issue, aware of the impact of climate change, and really to think about how can they make their developments more flood resilient.
Right. Melvin, now some of the measures in the guidebook, give us an idea of what can be potentially used for flood resilient designs in new developments.
Well, there will be a slew of measures, obviously, and we are going through, and the committee is going through all the possibilities. Now, the measures could range from simple ones that would be employed quite quickly, and we're also looking at those that may need retrofitting or some additional work on the buildings. For new buildings, we're also looking at a way of thinking, right? That flood resilience isn't just about something you do after the building is done, but the idea is to think of it upfront and be able to plan and design that into the building. Some of these could be soft approaches like semi-floodable spaces that would be able to recover very quickly. And then some are hard measures which will not allow water in because perhaps those are more critical areas. So we are looking at a wide range of possibilities.
Now, some of these possibilities, Melvin, how does it factor into, I suppose, the cost calculation?
Well, the cost of a development takes up not just the building itself. There are many aspects to it. In fact, some will argue that the maintenance of a building may cost even more eventually if a building stands for longer. So I think some of these has to be considered holistically, and we hope developers who are also on our committee will be able to see that benefit of thinking about this upfront and be able to see that, hey, by doing this, it's really an upside for them.
It's like future-proofing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that will actually bring down costs, isn't it? Yes. Now, so that's it for new developments. They can actually, like you said, future-proof, plan forward. What can be done for existing buildings?
Well, there are deployable systems that can be done stopgap when there are cases of water rising. But there are also areas where perhaps building owners could get maybe practitioners to come in, look at the building and maybe do some minor retrofitting, perhaps raising some of the openings that are too close to the ground, or perhaps creating some small walls. But these could also be quite tastefully designed with landscaping, and it would be able to still be very pleasant, we believe, for the building owners.
Okay. Tze-Ch'in, now this guidebook, how does the Alliance and this guidebook complement with PUB's existing efforts on flood resilience?
Like I said, I think we take a multi-pronged effort to dealing with flood resilience. Beyond the work that we do in terms of improving drainage infrastructure, in terms of coastal protection measures for Singapore's coastlines, we also have regulations in the form of codes of practice. We currently already have a code of practice for surface water drainage. In parallel with this Alliance for Action, which is working on the Flood Resilience Development's guidebook, we are also developing a new code of practice for coastal protection. So the codes of practice are more like regulation, where PUB sets the rules for developers to follow, for contractors to follow. But the guidebook is meant to be a bit more collaborative, more of a guide, more meant to be educational tool to give ideas and principles of what can be done to make your developments more flood resilient.
Okay. So speaking of, giving ideas, educational, right? I think we've all experienced the recent intensity and the higher rainfall. And of course, we're aware of the rising seawater levels, not just Singapore, but globally. How else can Singapore continue to guard against floods? Maybe Melvin, you can start.
Well, I think the guidebook is meant to kind of paint the picture that we should be looking at things holistically as opposed to just being stopgap. So having this holistic principles, we believe that there's upfront planning, number one, where there is considerations at regular intervals of a building life. So perhaps a risk assessment of sort, a way for building owners to take stock of what they are, where they are, and how they potentially can guard themselves moving forward. We are dealing with perhaps a bit of an unknown. How much sea level are we really dealing with? How much rain intensity? It is quite volatile in that sense. But the idea of the guide is, and the way it's named is resilience.
Yes.
It's all about dealing with these quick changes and intensities. But the idea is to be prepared early to be able to deal with it.
All right. On that note, thank you both for joining us today. And that was Tze-Ch'in, Chief Executive of PUB, and Melvin Tan, Immediate Past President of the Singapore Institute of Architects.